I'm Gary Slyman, President and Founder of Great Transition Strategies. Today's topic, remote leadership. Pandemic put us all into this environment where we're remote working and remote leadership, and we've talked about it several times, but it's here to stay. It's not going to go away. And let me tell you what brought this up for me. I'm working with a client, and she comes to me and says, my boss is bringing us back 100%. And here his thinking, which she completely disagrees with, and she thinks that they have the ability to be hybrid without any problem and maybe a lot more remote than ever considered before. So first, he says, we need to bring everyone back because I can't see what everyone's doing. I want to be able to see what everyone's doing. So I'm looking at what they're doing and getting the work done. That was number one. Second, we don't have the culture. The culture we have in this remote environment is not something that I want. I want to see a different culture, particularly as we onboard people. If people are going to grasp our culture, we need to have them here in place. And then the last, we're not as productive. He says he doesn't think the team is as productive as they could possibly be by working remote. People are not getting things done. Well, one, she pushed back on every one of those things, that you can have them. And this, as I was listening to what she's saying, here's what I heard. I heard three main areas that he's talking about. Number one is trust. Can you trust the individuals to do what they need to do while they're in the remote environment? That's number one. Number two, culture. Can you drive the culture you want in a remote environment, virtual environment? And number three, what about productivity? So let's do an overview of each one of those, and then I'm going to do a separate video later on each one of those categories as well in much more detail. So from an overview standpoint, trust. How do you build trust in the organization when you're not remote, when you're not virtual? Well, I've done a video on that where with the trust you build, first leadership's a bond of trust. And how do you build it? You set the example. You set and enforce a standard, you build and sustain morale with your team, and you show moral courage. Now those are big, broad categories. We can dig in a little more on the specifics, but people are trusting you because you're showing them how it needs to be done, you're showing them the standard, and you're enforcing it. Moral courage, standing up for them when it needs to be. So all those things are extremely important. So trust is no different in the virtual environment. The elements of it are not. Maybe the execution's a little different, but you need to have trust, and you need to trust your individuals. That's one. Okay, let's talk about culture. Maybe he's not getting the culture he wants, but there's a culture. If you're in the virtual environment, the remote environment, you have a culture. And that culture developed. How did it develop? If you're leading a team and you want a specific culture, what are you doing about it? If you are not setting the culture you want, and you're not being deliberate about what your expectations are, you're not going to get it. So if you want a particular culture, you need to do something about it to make sure that you get that. So culture, to me, culture is completely possible getting what you want. But now, what are you going to do to put that in place? And that's what we'll talk about in the next video on culture, about how do you put those things in place so you get what you're looking for, and onboarding people so they feel like they're completely part of the team. Absolutely, it can be done. Okay, productivity. Think about yourself. Well, yourself. Are you more productive at home when you don't have to commute? Are you more productive when you're not being interrupted, when you can get those spurts of time where you can actually get the work done? I'll tell you right now, and I'm going to pull out some of this data for us. The data shows, on average, organizations and people are more productive in the remote and virtual environment than they are in person. So on average. So the data doesn't support that, hey, you're not being more productive. But there are going to be some specifics to that as well. If you have someone working at home where there's 5 kids that are going through school, they might not be as productive. What's the work environment you're setting up? So let's look at the data and let's take a look at what it needs. So I see really 3 areas. Trust. How do you build trust in the virtual environment? Number 2, what are you doing about the culture? How are you being deliberate about it? And number 3, productivity. What are your KPIs, the key performance indicators, and what are you doing to measure them? Thanks for listening. We're going to dig into each of them in a lot more detail in the next series of videos, and I look forward to working with you and taking us through this journey on remote leadership. Thanks for listening. See you in the next video.